Galen, listen in.
But I think we also have to look at the rhetoric coming from the front runner in the presidential campaign. This is a man who in rallies has told the supporters to basically beat up the people who are in the crowd, and he'll pay their legal fees. Someone who encouraged people in the audience to rough up anyone who stands up and says something he doesn't like. And I think the media bears some responsibility. For too long, those comments were ignored. Some people thought they're cute. And he's got an extraordinary amount of coverage for all the stuff he says that's outrageous. Every time Donald Trump offends someone, says something ridiculous, says something offensive, it's wall-to-wall coverage, and it's only elevated him even more. And so I think we all look at this and say everyone bears responsibility for what's happening. But the result is, this is what a culture and a society looks like when everybody says whatever the heck they want. When everyone just goes around saying, I'm just going to speak my mind. If I'm angry, it gives me the right to say or do anything I want. Well, there are other people that are angry, too. And if they speak out and say whatever they want, the result is it all breaks down. It's called chaos. It's called anarchy. And that's what we're careening towards in our political process. The great thing about our republic is that we settle our differences in this country at the ballot box, not with guns or bayonets or violence. And you wonder whether we're headed in a different direction today, where we're no longer able or capable of having differences of opinion, but in fact now protests become a license to take violence, to take on your opponents physically. I think forget about the election for a moment. There's a broader issue in our political culture in this country. And this is what happens when a leading presidential candidate goes around feeding into a narrative of anger and bitterness and frustration. And I think we all need to take a step back and ask ourselves, are we contributing to this? Because if this continues, I don't think this country will continue to be ripped apart at the seams, and we will be incapable of solving any of the major issues that we have.
Senator, what do you think this means for the future of the Republican Party?
I think the question is, what does it mean for the future of America? It's not just the Republican Party. Look, Barack Obama has used divisive language as well. I will admit he hasn't called on people in the crowd to beat people up. But he has divided Americans up among, class warfare and things of this nature. I don't say he bears any responsibility for last night. There's real frustration in America. There are people in this country who are angry because they are working really hard and their jobs are gone. There are people in this country that are angry because they feel disenfranchised from the American dream. But the job of a leader is not to stoke that anger. The job of a leader is to address the causes of that anger and try to solve it, not try to stoke that anger so that they vote for you. And this, in many ways, not just Chicago, put that aside for a moment, the broader anger that now exists in the American political discourse is a direct result of the fact that words have consequences. That when you run for president of the United States, or if you are president of the United States, which everyone is endeavoring to be, you can't just take on the attitude that I'm going to say whatever I want. You can't say whatever you want. It has real-life consequences for people in this country and all over the world. And we're starting to see her bear out. You saw those images last night of people getting in their face, often divided up among racial lines in many cases, the police officers bleeding from the head, reminiscent of images from the 60s. I mean, we're going backwards here. This is a frightening, grotesque, and disturbing development in American politics.
So what should Donald Trump's message be to his supporters, especially these more violent ones? Should he tell them to stop?
A Donald Trump supporter sucker punched a man the other day at an event. Donald Trump has yet to condemn him. After the man was released from jail, he said, next time I'll kill him. He still has not condemned it. And so it tells you that in many ways he doesn't want to say anything to his supporters because he doesn't want to turn them off, because he understands that the reason why they are voting for him is because he has tapped into this anger. The problem is leadership has never been about taking people's anger and using it to get them to vote for you. If it is, it's a dangerous style leadership. Leadership is about acknowledging people's anger, but as a leader, trying to address why it is they're angry, instead of manipulating their anger so that they become your voter, your donor, and your supporter. So I think Donald Trump needs to ask, when is he going to start condemning this stuff? Because instead, all he's saying is these are really bad dudes, almost as of justifying that since he, from 400 yards away or 400 feet away, concludes that these people look dangerous to him, he understands that the crowd likes to rough them up. That sort of thing bleeds out into the broader political debate. And I want to be clear, okay? The protesters in Chicago were not blameless. These people, many of them were clearly just there to be agitators. They were there just to create a ruckus, okay? I know the type. People just went there and say, hey, let's go out, we can form a scene. Others were there, part of interest groups. Chicago is a city that is teeming with paid protesters. And you don't have a right to say, I don't like what someone's doing, so I'm going to go blow up their event. You see this on college campuses. The left bears responsibility as well. But I am telling you that this boiling point that we have now reached has been fed largely by the fact that we have a front runner in my party who has fed into language that basically justifies physically assaulting people who disagree with you.
Senator, are you more upset or disappointed the way this is unfolding?
Both. I'm upset because I'm fed about what it's doing to our country. We are being ripped apart at the seams now. The divisions are becoming along class and along, in some instances, it appears race and other elements, and it's disturbing. But I'm also, I'm sad. I'm sad for this country. This is supposed to be the example to the world of how a republic functions. And instead, people are watching third world images last night coming out of Chicago.
Would you call those protesters thugs? I mean, that's what Donald Trump called them this morning.
Some of them probably are. Sure, some of them probably are, but it wasn't just one incident. If this was just one time that it happened, you would say, oh, this is about Chicago and about a bunch of thugs that showed up and said, we're going to disrupt an event. But it's not just about Chicago. It happened in St. Louis. It happened earlier this week. Allegedly, his campaign manager has roughed up a reporter at an event. This has happened repeatedly now. This is not new. This is a pattern of the idea that we are angry, and since we are angry, we can say or do whatever we want. We are tired of being constrained by civility, tired of being constrained by rules of cultural engagement. We are tired of being told, and I get it, people are frustrated at the direction of our country, but leaders cannot say whatever they want because words have consequences. They lead to actions that others take. And when the person you're supporting for president is going around saying things like, go ahead and slap him around, I'll pay your legal fees, what do you think's going to happen next? Someone's going to actually literally believe it and take it upon themselves. And when you have someone sucker punch a guy at an event, and then the day after he's released from jail talking about the next time we may have to kill him, and this is that's just one person, but I guarantee you there are others that felt the same way.
Senator, you point to some of the racial divisions that we're seeing at these protests, and certainly Donald Trump, you've criticized many times comments, for example, that he's made refusing to condemn the KKK or on immigrants. What do you think are the implications of a Trump presidency for race relations in America?
I don't know, other than to tell you that beyond that is, I think, I've already told you what I think his candidacy is going to mean, and that is it will shred, and I believe Donald Trump as our nominee is going to shatter and fracture the Republican Party and the conservative movement. I think it's already having that function, and I think a Donald Trump presidency, would be more along those lines apparently. But right now I'm focused on, what does this mean to the political discourse, and more importantly to the role of the Republican Party and the conservative movement in this discourse.
Senator, two quick things. Will you still support him if he's the nominee? And a lot of what you just described happened before Thursday night. You were asked Thursday night, essentially, about tone, about how he's been comporting himself on the trail. Why not confront him face to face, or have you backstage perhaps, talk to him about this?
Well, behind stage, we basically are interacting for 15 seconds before we walk on the stage. So that's that. As far as I did. I mean, I was asked a question about his comments on Islam, and I said exactly what I said to you right now, and that is that presidents say whatever they want. And I described the consequences that it has. How are you going to be the commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces when you have men and women of the Muslim faith who serve us in uniform, who could be killed in action? How are you going to be commander-in-chief when you know that our men and women in uniform have people they are working with all over the world who are Muslim, who have taken great sacrifices on our behalf? There is a doctor in Pakistan who was a Muslim who was involved in aiding the United States, according to open press reports, in our efforts to capture Osama bin Laden. He was a Muslim. What do you say to him? He hated America. He's in jail today in Pakistan. There are people that have died who are Muslims who have helped the United States as interpreters. There are servicemen and women in the United States who will tell you that they were injured in combat, and Muslim families took them into their home and sheltered them until help could arrive. What do you say to missionaries who are all over the world operating in Muslim countries where Muslim families are protecting them or helping them, even though they're not converting? They're helping them because they like them as persons and individuals. And now the message coming out of America from a leading presidential candidate is, I know you hate us, and implying maybe we hate you. There are consequences to these words. There really are. Presidents and presidential candidates cannot just say anything they want. And I did say that at the debate.
But do you support him as the nominee if he's the nominee?
I don't know. I mean, I already talked about the fact that I think Hillary Clinton would be terrible for this country, but the fact that you're even asking me that question, I still, at this moment, continue to intend to support the Republican nominee, but it's getting harder every day.
Senator, do you think you will win in Florida on Tuesday? And if not, will your campaign continue?
I'm focused on winning Florida. I haven't thought about Wednesday. I said it yesterday. I literally don't even know what I'm having for lunch or dinner today. I don't even know my schedule today. I just go where they take me today and the rest of this day. So, but I intend to win Florida. We haven't made any decision after Florida.
Senator, you've repeatedly said that anger is not a plan. You say that a lot in your stump speeches. Last night, you did say that there's a lot of blame to go around, and you just said this right now. How much of the blame rests with President Obama, as you said, and his divisive policies, as you called them? How much do you blame President Obama for what's going on right now?
Well, I think President Obama has been politically divisive. There's no doubt. I mean, he has taken an attitude that if you don't agree with him on public policy, you're bad. I've seen him do that, and I think that's divisive. And as perhaps a contributor to all this, but this is different. I mean, this is a different level that we're discussing now. This is the intentional injection of the use of people's anger. Basically, this is a political candidate in Donald Trump who has identified that there are some really angry people in America. They feel as they've been mistreated by the culture, by society, by our politics, by our economy, and he knows this. And they have in many instances. They really have. Every major institution in our society has failed us. Higher education has failed us. Organized religion has failed us. The media is failing us. Politicians and political parties are failing us. Government's failing us. Every major institution we once relied on are failing us over the last 20 years, and people are frustrated. You know, you're working as hard as you ever have, and you can't make ends meet, and along comes a presidential candidate and says to you, you know why your life is hard? Because fill in the blank. Somebody, someone, some country, they're the reasons for it. Give me power so I can go after them. That's what he's feeding into. That is not leadership. That is not productive leadership. That is not good leadership, and it is not keeping with our American tradition. That is a style of leadership that says, I know you're angry, and I'm going to take advantage of it so that you vote for me. But what it overlooks is the consequences of it. And his style of doing it is basically along the lines of, I'm going to say whatever I want, even if it's not, quote-unquote, politically correct. Well, politically correct is one thing. It shouldn't keep you from saying truth. But another thing is to be rude and obnoxious and offensive, deliberately offensive for purposes of driving media narrative. And I want to be frank, and I'm not talking about any of you in particular because I know you don't make these decisions, but I hope the U.S. media begins to examine the role they've played in all this. Because I can tell you that for months I've been giving speeches on public policy and nobody paid a lot of attention. And the minute that I mentioned anything personal about Donald Trump, every network cut in live to my speeches hoping I would say more of it. So then they could go on the air and say, oh, this is so sad. Subtitle, we're going to keep giving it coverage because it's good for our ratings. So I think we need, the media needs to begin to examine the role it's played in creating this atmosphere, because I know it's good for ratings, but it's really detrimental to our political culture and to our country at large.
Thank you, everyone.